Welcome back to the second part of the first session, Towards Less Suffering. This video is the second in a series of 8 that covers the whole Action for Living course as an introduction to acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. Let's have a quick recap from the first video. First, we introduced the difference between pain and suffering. That while pain is often unavoidable, suffering is optional. We suggested that we might address our suffering by trying to dare to face our fear. That is, use diffusion, acceptance, realistic goals, and embracing our values to cope with our tendency to fuse with our thoughts, set excessive and unrealistic goals, avoid discomfort, and be remote from our values. Finally, we identified some of the internal and external barriers that might prevent us from moving forward. In today's session, we're going to introduce you to 3 important aspects of ACT, which underpin all the skills we learn. These are psychological flexibility, values, and mindfulness. As the image suggests, these are all connected and interrelated. So let's consider how we might move from remoteness from values to embracing values. While we'll go into more detail about the role values play in our experiences in the final videos, values underpin everything else we'll be covering, and we'd like to get you started right away by starting to reflect on them. Values are like our guiding stars or our compass through life, more like the directions we want to move in than the goals we want to achieve along the way. We can't achieve our values, they keep leading us along. Our values are what matters to us. If you think about it, when we do something because it really matters to us, we're much more likely to achieve it. Thinking back to school, did you try harder in certain lessons? Did you revise harder for certain exams? And just as a career advisor may have used our favourite subject to recommend a particular career path, being clear about our values now can help us find the right path to take forward. You're free to choose your own values, and you already have chosen values, although you may not be clear about them yet. So how can you discover your current values? By recognizing what you care about and by recognizing what moves you emotionally. You discover what your values are and are helped to choose your values through your feelings. Notice what your reactions are to this picture. Perhaps you have the thoughts, poor bird, poor earth, those terrible companies. Perhaps the feelings of indifference, sadness, or anger. Any and all of these will point you in the direction of your values. So that poor bird might suggest empathy, while anger might suggest a keen sense of justice or fairness. We want you to start thinking about what your values might be. We hope by the final session you will have a clearer idea of what is important, meaningful, and valued to you. To do this, we will provide you with practice to complete between lessons. But to get you started, we'd like to explore some values now. As we said earlier, our values play a crucial role in how we live our lives and how we manage our pain and suffering. They have their own part in the fear, dare acronyms, and we cover them more extensively in the final videos. However, as it can be hard to make changes without giving some thought to why we want to make those changes, we include some work on values right here at the start, and then every session. Exercise, Values Checklist. This activity aims to explore your values. It can be difficult to identify these if they haven't been thought about. By completing this exercise, you will begin to discover what will help motivate your behaviour towards a life you find meaningful. You might need a pen and a piece of paper for this exercise and want to pause the video for a while, or just do your best while you watch. Firstly, read through the values on the slide and note down on a piece of paper 10 values you feel are the most important to you. Now I'd like you to reduce the 10 values you picked to the 3 most important values to you currently. Be aware of how difficult you may find this task, as we would like to believe that we encompass all of our values all of the time. However, this is unrealistic, as we can't always live in accordance with our values all the time. For example, family and responsibility are both values. You might be working from home and still have important meetings and responsibilities. However, with your child off school, you have to see to their needs, and often your family value takes priority over your responsibility value. Note also how difficult it is to cross out our values. We can be fused to them, believing they are accurate representations or reflections of who we are, leaving crossing out making us feel quite uncomfortable. Then if you can, reduce it to the top value, the most important to you right now. Again, you may find this really difficult as we're asking you to pick your most meaningful, important value at this point in time. However, it's important to note that what may be your most important value today may not be tomorrow, next week, next month. This value would likely still be important to you. However, values have different weights at different points in your life. We'll be discussing value confliction in the final videos. So some of you may have found the exercise quite easy, which is good, as you'll be more readily able to use those values to assess if your current actions live up to them and to motivate you in new directions if they don't. Others, however, may have really struggled with this. Perhaps it was too difficult to ascribe anything positive to yourself. If so, you might get a lot out of when we look at cognitive diffusion in the next session. Perhaps there wasn't enough time for you. Maybe we set quite an excessive goal here. in which case you could create a more realistic goal for yourself and try again another time. Ultimately, for many people, identifying our values can be challenging. However, it is something we persevere with, as making change can also be hard, but when we feel motivated to do something, it's amazing what we can manage. We'll continue to look at values over the next few videos. By beginning to explore your values, you're taking the right steps towards a meaningful and valued life. The skills you learn in this course will help you move in the direction you want your life to go. This course will also give you an introduction to mindfulness. At its most basic level, mindfulness is the awareness that arises by paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. This is perhaps the most well-known definition by one of the originators of the use of mindfulness in the West, Jon Kabat-Zinn. Notice that it is more than just being in the moment. It's both about having an intention and, as best we can, being non-judgmental. With this last part, the key is to non-judgmentally notice how judgmental we are, rather than to rigidly refuse to make any judgments. The roots of mindfulness lie in Buddhist meditation practices. Yet today it flowers in a wide range of non-religious contexts, including health, business, even sports. In terms of its deliberate cultivation, mindfulness goes back thousands of years. Many spiritual traditions have encouraged being present in the moment to make connection with ourselves or with the divine. Mindfulness is a core part of the teachings of Buddhism, perhaps more so than any other tradition. So much of current mindfulness teaching and learning draws from the Buddhist meditation tradition. But you don't need to be a Buddhist to be mindful, no more than it's required to be a Christian to practice Western psychology. Mindfulness in terms of awareness is intrinsic in all of us as human beings, and is one of the things that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. Can you experience being aware in this moment? Probably can, becoming aware of various aspects of experience through the senses, the body as a whole, maybe through attention itself. So let's try as an exercise just picking one object that we could attend to and see what happens if you decide that I'm going to feel my breath and be aware of my breath for the next 3 minutes. Press pause and see how this goes. What did you notice? You might have felt the breath come in and go out. Maybe you found yourself thinking about the breath, or rapidly noticing that your mind drifts off to something else. When you noticed that, were you able to bring your attention back to your breath? If you just do this over and over, like you would train a puppy, it may begin to get easier to be aware of your breath, body, and thoughts. We'll return to focusing on mindfulness again in the second session of the course, though it's still only the briefest of introductions. Psychological flexibility is the ability to adapt to a situation with awareness, openness, and focus, and to take effective action guided by your values. That's Russ Harris in The Happiness Trap. In everyday language, this means holding our own thoughts and emotions a bit more lightly, diffusing and acting on longer-term values, embracing values rather than short-term impulses, thoughts, and feelings. Psychological flexibility is the ability to fully contact the present moment and the thoughts and feelings it contains without needless defense, maybe avoidance of discomfort, and depending on what the situation affords, persisting in or changing behavior in the pursuit of goals and values. So why is this important? Because thoughts and emotions tend to be unreliable indicators of long-term value. We have little control over them, and they tend to ebb and flow, sometimes dramatically. If we trust our thoughts and emotions and act based on them, we can often overlook the more important, sustained patterns of action which bring true meaning, vitality, and richness in our lives. If you want the same results, then keep doing what you're doing. Rigid thinking and habitual actions that we've picked up over our lives can be a major barrier to us living the lives we want to live. At some point, the way we lived our lives probably worked for us, but we've moved on. And when we don't move with it, we can start to add suffering. The bottom line is that it's important that we learn to be more flexible and to live more in the present moment than in the past, so that we can make better decisions in the here and now to help us achieve the life we want for ourselves. To build psychological flexibility, there are 3 skills which are trained. Increase awareness of the present moment, what's happening now. Cognitive diffusion, getting unstuck from thoughts. Values-based action, doing what matters to you. So increased awareness of the present moment by increasing one's sensitivity to what is happening means we can discriminate between what we observe with our 5 senses and what our sometimes unreliable minds tell us is happening. Cognitive diffusion means developing the ability to watch thoughts that come and go and then choosing which to act on, rather than getting hooked by difficult or disruptive thoughts. It's not about changing thoughts, but maybe changing one's relationship to them. Values-based action is ultimately about focusing attention on what it is we really want to achieve. Increasing awareness of an individual's values helps to build motivation and enables people to take positive and sustained action, even when doing so is challenging. And all of these fit nicely into the Fear to Dare acronym. Increasing your flexibility means broadening the range of what you're able to do. Broadening the range means doing things that you don't already do. It can help you discover your strengths, your limits, your values, your goals, new strategies to cope, new options to live your life. It increases choice. Pulling it all together, pain does not equal suffering. There's a number of barriers to overcoming suffering. We want to dare to face fear, and values and flexibility, they're important. The ACT approach may be different from what you've tried in the past. Many people have found this approach helpful. We just ask for you to keep an open mind and give everything a go. You'll find all the home practice exercises in the summary of the session on the website. Exercise 1, a world of unlimited confidence. In this exercise, ask yourself what would be different in a world where you had unlimited confidence. Exercise 2, identifying barriers to change. This exercise will help you to recognize what barriers are currently standing in your way. It uses the FEAR acronym and invites you to explore what is currently stopping you from living a life which is meaningful and valued. You completed a values checklist in the session, which provided you with an opportunity to begin exploring your values. Here's another one. Think to yourself, what really matters to you deep in your heart? What do you want to do with your time on this planet? What sort of person do you want to be? What personal strengths or qualities do you want to develop? Use the boxes on the summary sheet to help you record these. Exercise 3, increasing flexibility. This exercise involves you deliberately changing an action that you often do in the same way. For all of us, the current circumstances of social distancing and lockdown have tested our flexibility by changing our entire way of life. Being more flexible means being more able to adapt to changes like this. Think about your normal commute. You might have always taken the same route home from work, and we'd normally ask you now to challenge that habit, to do it differently. This would not be about finding a better route or a better way of doing something, just about doing it in a different way to break out of the automatic habit and to add some flexibility. It can also illustrate that much of what we do is automatic. We don't give it any thought. So by doing it differently, consciously, by taking control, we're putting ourselves in the driving seat, adding to our flexibility. So maybe if you have a favourite walk that you take once a day, change the route or go in the opposite direction. Or if you always sit in a particular chair to watch TV, swap chairs just for a change. How does that feel? Now, none of what we're suggesting is of any great significance, but what's important is that you're deliberately varying something that has become habitual. You're taking control, being mindful, and adding to your flexibility. So this course is made up of 4 sessions, and each is split into 2 parts over 2 videos. So in total, there will be 8 videos. For each session, there's a handout summarising all of the content discussed, and also providing opportunities to practice the skills and techniques introduced. You can find the handout on our website. I hope you found this first session useful. You can find the next session on acceptance of discomfort on the next page of the website. Russ Harris, the author of The Happiness Trap, has developed some COVID-19 related resources, including a document and video titled Face COVID, that aim to help us respond effectively to the current crisis. I hope you join us again soon.